This episode was recorded on December 7th, 2 days prior to the face-off debate. Hope you enjoy, and don't forget to go watch the debate if you haven't already.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Paramedic AF show. We're back just the two of us again. We have more interviews scheduled coming up, but for right now, you're stuck with just the two of us.
Well, and I mean, it's the holiday season and, all that. Plus, some of the students like hearing us run our mouths and bicker.
Yeah. So anyway, obviously go check out our merch on bonfire.com. We have the link. It's in our link tree, and I'll make sure I post it in the description as well, so you can just go straight to that. But anyway, we would appreciate the support as always. There's some kind of cool stuff on there. I love the Bearded AF shirt. Of course, it's in the laundry right now, so I'm not wearing it at the moment, but I'll plan better next time. So if you've been following our TikTok recently, you know that there's a debate coming up this week. And unfortunately, it's just going to be me. Michelle's going to be at work. And the guy didn't want to do a 2-on-1. He just wanted to do a 1-on-1.
Well, but honestly, what he's wanting to argue about, it's actually better, at least for the initial, to be with just you.
There's no just initial, like this is a one and done.
Well, but I just mean like what he's wanting to argue about literally sexism in EMS, it's better for it to be you arguing it. Could you imagine, just for shits and giggles, could you imagine if he agreed to a secondary one, you destroyed him, and then I ended him with a KO? Like, I don't think he's prepared.
I don't know. I think with how I see him talk about females, I'm pretty sure I would get pissed off listening to him talk to you, but that's neither here nor there.
Maybe that's why you wouldn't participate with that one.
Yeah.
I would need you to be like at work away.
Yeah. So anyway. So this fella,
remain nameless.
Oh no, I mean I have no problem. I'll put a picture right here with his of him publicized his stuff sort of. But the discussion started when we reposted a video that Michelle, it was a clip from one of our earlier episodes where Michelle was talking about a previous instructor who had treated her like absolute dog shit and was belittling and told her that she should just drop out. She needed to not participate in class because she was going to fail and mental health was an issue, yada, 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 yada.
Well, and he very specifically told me it was because I was a female who wasn't a firefighter. Like the instructor literally made it about sexism and the fact that I wasn't a firefighter I don't care, sharing at Northwest Arkansas. This dude, I hate to this day, like he's a raging piece of shit. And I think it's just hilarious with how far I've come, some of the stuff that he said. It was a video basically recapping a discussion that we had on another podcast episode. It was a clip.
And he basically was like, oh, well, sounds like he was a good instructor that knew how to motivate you. And I think he thought that you were the person that was in the comments first, because I came at him sideways.
Oh, 100. He 100% thought it was me coming after him in the comments and not you.
Yeah. So I wasn't hostile. I was pretty direct and basically was like, just because if someone uses toxic behavior to their advantage and grows in spite of it, doesn't mean that behavior is good or should be repeated or replicated in any way, shape, or form. And so, I pushed back on it. I was like, you're missing the point of the video. Well, he kept on and was basically like, oh, well, no, he just knew how to motivate you the right way. And maybe we just need tougher providers out there. And that's when I was like, oh, you motherfucker.
Well,
that was where I threw in the gaslighting thing. And he was like, oh, you disagree with a woman, then it's gaslighting. I said, no, bro, this is the dude talking.
Yes, because I made a follow-up video about one of his TikToks because it was something that we had talked about previously about exactly what Daniel just said, that like toxic behavior.
You made a reply to his comment.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, like a follow-up video or whatever. That was basically like giving more clarifying information. It's not so much that he was telling me that, it wasn't just that he was telling me I was going to be a failure. He was literally telling me that I wasn't allowed to participate in class, which has nothing to do with toxic. That's not even toxic motivation. That is literally like, well, I can't kick you out of class or I'm going to get sued for it. So you're just going to sit in the corner and, sit on your hands. Like that has nothing to do with toxic instruction at all. That's like complete, sexism. I don't even know what you would call it for mental health, but like there was nothing legally, professionally, like there was nothing about that conversation that was okay. It had nothing to do with toxic behavior. So I just made a follow-up video clarifying, and I was like, hey, you need to go watch this podcast so you have more information. well, I guess because I made the follow-up video, is when he was saying that disagreeing with me is when I turned around and said that he was gaslighting. And Daniel was like, "No, bro, this has been me in the comments." I don't think I commented back at
You
all. It
didn't,
was
no.
all you.
Yeah.
It was just so funny.
And then he tried to do the whole, oh, well, that's weird. A husband and wife having a shared TikTok. Oh, and I'm like, bro, we have our own individual ones. This is part of a project, you dumbass. Which, to be fair, I did delete my personal one. It was just annoying. Honestly, I've deleted a lot of my personal social media.
I was going to say, but you've deleted pretty much all of your personal social media, and that had nothing to do with any.
I know. I was just like, bro, just stop. Like, you're not the first person to try to say this shit. Don't come at me that way. It's funny at this point. Anyway, so we were all carrying on, and he basically was like, well, how about we do a live debate? And I said, bet, I'll see you there in 5 minutes. So I jumped on the live and was basically like, cool, I'm here waiting for you. And some of the other people that have been commenting with us went to him and was like, yeah, bro, Dan's waiting for you. Let's go.
Long story short, he pussied out on that one and was like, oh, Will, I have to work. But mind you, the last video or comment or whatever that he did, he was literally sitting in a bathtub. Like, you could tell that he was in the bathtub, like, half naked.
Well, most of his videos were that way.
Yeah, which he has a paramedic tattoo on his chest, but he's now like a travel nurse or something. And one of the other videos that he made is about how like he loves traveling because he doesn't have to stick around with all the toxic behavior at some of these hospitals because not liking him has nothing to do with professionalism.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Now, to be fair, when he asked for the debate, he didn't say it had to be right now. He just asked, you want to do a live debate? I said, sure, absolutely. So when, he was like, well, I can't do it right now. So I was like, okay, cool. So when are we doing it? And he gave me like 2 different days, and I said, cool, well, this day I'm off work, so that's when we'll do it. So it'll be on our channel. And as far as I know, TikTok records everything with the lives. I'm debating on whether or not to have it truly unedited. Like, if I do any editing, it'll just be like taking out pauses, like taking out filler shit, not like rearranging or splicing it or whatever. But maybe I'll just do it unedited. We'll see. But he said he wants to have a debate, and it's going to be kind of like Louder with Crowder style, where he's putting out a proposition and saying, basically, change my mind. And his proposition is that men make better EMS providers than women and better leaders overall. That is his assertion, not my words. That was put in writing.
That was his writing. I've seen the messages. Was that private or was that public?
Oh, that was public.
Okay, I was about to say, because I know I've seen it. And I don't remember you sharing it. I don't remember us talking about it. So yeah, he publicly put that because he also has several videos on there where basically he believes that the perfect woman is barefoot and pregnant, homemaker.
And that if you can't do that, then you're basically not woman enough to do it. Just like, bro, you just, what the fuck?
Daniel and I had decided that it was best that I not comment.
Yeah, well, and not because you couldn't defend yourself.
No,
he's gonna feed that shit, and he's going to purposely try to go and get under your skin.
Well, and if he knew anything about our dynamic, he's going to say that I'm not a woman.
Well, no, I mean, he's outright said in comments and other videos, talking to other people, saying that a relationship dynamic like ours is doomed for failure, statistically doomed for failure. So we're going to have a fun conversation about that because words talk and numbers scream. But
I can't wait for him to hear about our sex life.
He claims he's married too. I guess we'll see how that pans out for him. But anyway, he messaged me privately, and he was like, oh, we never confirmed details. Well, I did comment, but TikTok does fuck around with comments sometimes. So I'll give them that.
I don't like how they misorder because sometimes they are hard to follow.
Well, and sometimes if you don't click the right link, then it won't show the comment. But then if you go another way, you'll see it. So I'll give him that. And he literally was just like, yeah, I think this will be good for the both of us, even if it's like the death of me or something like that. Like basically, if it destroys his reputation, I didn't say anything back. I'll let him think what he wants to think. So anyway, it's going to be a civil debate. I'm not going in there to be inflammatory, to be derogatory, none of that.
I don't think even when you're genuinely mad, I've never seen you get derogatory or anything else. Plus, you and I have talked about so much of this between the podcast and I wouldn't even say home debates, but like home discussions about the male, female gender roles and responsibilities and all that kind of stuff, especially with our weird family dynamic. You're too well prepared for this. I don't think he has any idea what he's walking into.
Well, and I grew up in a very, I don't think that the concept of a patriarchal family is inherently bad. However, I think it is a way to have your family set up that for some people works and some people doesn't. but there is very clearly a bad application of it, and that is largely what I grew up with. That is how I was indoctrinated as a child and well into my adulthood. Obviously, it's not what I believe now, but I'm very well acquainted with this line of reasoning and a lot of the quote supporting evidence, thought processes, logic, so called. And so I'm gonna have fun. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
So some of what we want to talk about on the podcast today is actually brought up about having women in EMS.
Yeah, because I mean, it's, you know, and we're not getting into the whole how many genders thing there are. For the sake of this discussion, we're talking about masculine and feminine. Period. The end.
Mhm.
Whatever else you want to get into, don't fucking care. Whatever you want to be called, whatever you want to identify as, totally fine with it. No judgment. It's cool. But for the sake of this discussion, we're going to keep it simple because there is a lot to be said about the gender roles and characteristics, broadly speaking, and then in the context specifically of EMS. And there is some numeric data, loose numeric data surrounding this that is worth talking about. But this is a discussion that is polarizing to a lot of people. And I think you and I actually fall very much in the middle, more so than some people would think, probably. And you and I think a lot alike on this, which is very rare for men and women to be aligned on it. And this debate isn't me trying to be an apologist for all females. Like, that's
No, there are some whorish, absolute cunt bucket women out there. This is not to fluff up all of the women. This is not, and listen, there are some great women, there are some shitty women, just as there are some great men and there are some shitty men. And, you know, some of the men and women who absolutely talk absolute ass about their ex. There are some, like my rapist ex-husband, who genuinely are absolutely shitty. And then there are some who want to play the victim. So the thing with gender is you can have some statistics and everything, but with mental health, with the psyche, with roles and responsibilities, with goals, with all kinds of stuff, it is so hard to say that one gender is better than the other because there are certain situations where I absolutely school Daniel, but 9 times out of 10, he schools me. It does not mean that one is better than the other.
and that's the crux of our thought process on this is to the response to misogyny is not inverse misogyny. It's not to say, oh, well, all men suck and women are just better at everything. No, both genders, both, both energies, if you will, are meant to be complementary. They're meant to work together. There are a lot of things that Michelle is stronger at than me, and there's a lot of things that I'm stronger at than her. And we, instead of making that a butting heads thing or a competition, we leverage off of each other. We utilize each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that works out well. There's plenty of times where she has better instincts on some things than I do. So I will ask her, like, hey, you're better at this than me. Tell me your impression of this and what's going on. And sure, if it's my situation, then I make the decision on what I'm going to do, but I will consult with her to say, hey, you have a slightly better insight on some of, these dynamics in this situation, whatnot. Tell me what you think. And that's not me being a weak leader or whatever. That's what leadership is it's working together. It's not putting yourself on a pedestal, but saying, hey, I want to listen. I want to learn. I'm not perfect and I can make mistakes. So I should factor in everything when I'm making a decision. And the same goes with her. It's the exact same mentality.
Don't get me wrong. We like competition. Don't get me wrong.
Well, and you and I, so what people see of you and I publicly, not that it's not genuine, but it's different than how we are. In a way, it's different than we are privately.
Yeah, we literally just talked about this.
Yeah, we did. We did. So, like, Michelle is very much an alpha female, and that's how she presents to everybody out and about. When she comes home, it's not that we have this environment where I have to be in charge. I'm the superior. It's she doesn't have to be that way. She doesn't have to be in that masculine energy at home because that's the culture we cultivate at home. Out and about, we're both alphas. We're both doing shit together. We're both standing as a united front. But when we're at home, we have, yes, some could say it's a more traditional energy, not like, oh, she does all the cooking and cleaning and I do whatever.
She's
No,
the better cook. That's not true.
I am. But I love you. But
I have no issue. I have no issue admitting that. Daniel's the better cook. We do not have traditional roles.
and we're slowly getting to the point where the kids can do the majority of the cleaning. So that's a self-correcting problem. Thank God. We just need to monitor them closely. But
I'm tired of dirty cups.
yeah, I know. But so yes, we have more of a traditional exchange at home, But that's something we voluntarily chose, and we have fleshed that out, and it works for us. And that's not to say that that's the way that every single couple has to be out there. That's just what we found works for us. It makes sense because, well, yeah, we can get into all that. So when we're talking about women in the EMS, we kind of need to lay a little bit of groundwork for the discussion about gender roles and characteristics, and I think that's two different things. There is a difference between generalized characteristics. Yes, there are some things that are generally stereotypically true of men and of women, but that is not a strictly defined category either. There is a lot of variation, and some of it is nature, and some of it is nurture. But there are generally stereotypes, but they're just that. They're stereotypes. They're not hard and fast rules. The one thing that, I guess I take away from doing probability and statistics in college, because fuck that
I
class.
hated that class.
Dear God. But when you're plotting out answers of an equation using like a dot graph, a plot graph, you have your consistent trends that when you step back and look at all of it, yes, you see a general trajectory, but then there's outliers. There's so much variation within that is not like a straight line.
You just pulled so much nerd out of your ass with that one.
It's about to get worse.
I know, because I love how he pulled it from the class that we hated.
Yeah. Now and I like the term masculine and feminine energy because that encompasses a lot of things. It is a generally masculine behavior to be a protector, to be an aggressive protector. That does not mean that women can't have that instinct, can't have that energy. It is just traditionally a male characteristic. Cool, it's masculine.
Listen, I will cut anybody for our kids. I would cut anybody for a child.
Mhm.
Like, how quickly did the two of us jump out of the vehicle this morning? That dude is
Oh, listen, I was about to catch some hands.
But that's what I'm saying. The two of us were standing like fucking guard dogs.
Well, and obviously you have to be careful when you're in public because you need to not start something, because even if you're doing a good deed, you can still go to fucking jail for it. So we were out at breakfast this morning, and we're sitting in the car, and we hear this yelling outside and go up and look.
I mean, shit, it wasn't just yelling. I mean, that was like screaming at the top of your lungs, like bellowing, like.
And this motherfucker was out there yelling at his wife and I think his grandkids, honestly.
If not grandkids, they were old as fucking dirt when they had kids. Because these were like itty bitties. Like, we're talking like the youngest one was like waddling. So like maybe 2.
Yeah. And so I was getting fucking mad. So I, get out of the car, and we're a good way. We're halfway across the parking lot from them. So, I mean, I would have to be a provocateur to get involved, but I wasn't hiding either. And my biggest concern was watching to see if it got physical, because it was a verbal altercation that would have gotten physical very quickly.
100%. And I mean, he was doing the arm motions, the yelling. I mean, it wasn't just running his mouth. I mean, it was very much like yanking the kids through the parking lot, screaming. And from what we could hear, it was literally like screaming about a to-go bag. Yeah, like it was the dumbest thing in the world. And honestly, with the red face flushing and everything, I guarantee you he's an alcoholic.
Yeah. So, I got out, and first she was like, Daniel, don't. Well,
it's more so don't aggress, because of the way you got out and you were clenching fists.
Oh, wow.
I know how to read your body language,
it's a
Linda.
Good thing I was not packing.
Literally. Mine was in the car, but.
Well, yeah, I was not physically packing on me. But if this motherfucker, I wouldn't have needed it. But anyway, that's a natural, like, violent protective instinct that, yes, because we both have more, alpha protective instincts in us. That's not exclusive to one or the other. I think we both agree that I tend to be the one that is more willing to look for a fight. Come on.
I have never once. I have
more of a propensity to violence of various strains. But again, that's just an example of, just because something has a masculine energy, that does not mean that it is exclusively relegated to the male gender. So when we're referring to masculine energy, feminine energy, that's a spectrum of things that are based in stereotypes, but not hard and fast, barriers and roles.
Well, when you're talking about the spectrum, I would also say the severity, if you will, at which you project those as well. Because, like, you can have a masculine energy where you're good at conflict. I'm very good at conflict, but I don't usually push it with a heavy hand unless absolutely necessary. I try and come at conflict with a firm, like, I used to say nurturing way, like, "I understand where you're coming from, but we're not gonna do this. This is how we're gonna do it," versus just straight masculine, like, rage energy is gonna be more heavy-handed and snappy. And even Daniel's not like that. Like, some supervisors that are passive as shit, that are worth nothing until their leadership is challenged, and then they turn into nasty little cunts.
Generally speaking, like in EMS, that's a common thread.
Oh, yeah, no, I wasn't even thinking of one in particular. Like, there's a few that have had this general behavior where once their leadership is challenged, then they get nasty, they get overly heavy-handed, like, to the point that it's unnecessary, which honestly, handling it unnecessarily like that can actually cause other issues for them because they're
Huh?
literally proving their inadequacy for leadership. So, you can have masculine or feminine energy in a spectrum all within itself because even Daniel, there's nothing about Daniel that's feminine, but there's some times where Daniel will handle something like our daughter, for example, who's going through hormone changes like a motherfucker. I will openly admit that 9 times out of 10, I'm just like, I can't fix this. I don't know what to do with it. And then Daniel, the loving father, comes in and he's just like, "Hey, baby, let's talk because this ain't working, and you're gonna kill your mom. Your mama's gonna kill." Not actually.
There's going to be problems.
Yes, there we go. But there's nothing about Daniel that I would call feminine, but it's a spectrum on sometimes you have to be a little more light touched in order to handle something correctly.
And there are some jobs, some industries that do require more of one kind of energy than another. I think it's fair to say that military and special forces require much more masculine energy. Now, there's plenty of women that fit that bill, but it's categorizing the behavior as a whole, the mindsets as a whole, rather than saying the mindset is strictly confined to your genitals, because that just sounds weird when you say it, but that's the logical implication of what this Nick fella is saying who wants to have the debate.
Well, and here's the thing, and I find it ironic that he's a nurse, but here's the thing that
He's
I
a
could find it
merce.
whatever. Here's the thing that I could find being relatively true. So within EMS,
No,
because
no shitting on you fellas. It's giving him grief because he's like this in a largely female dominated field. But
yes, which is the funniest part.
yeah,
No, no hate on nursing at all. Um, but something, and I could be completely wrong. Now, obviously, nursing has so many specialties. I'm sure at some point I'm incorrect, but generally speaking, let's compare ER emergency medicine to emergency medicine 911, like EMS. I feel like in EMS, we have to be a lot more of the masculine energy because we're out in the field. We're dealing with the populace. We don't have a doctor to fall back on. Not that nurses can't be independent, so please don't get your panties in a wad. But generally speaking, like we're QRV chase trucks, sprinters, chase trucks, whatever you want to call it. But we by ourselves have to be able to be the independent leaders. If we have a cardiac arrest, we have to be the independent leader. We're not going to yield to a doctor because they're just not there. We are the leaders. There's more masculine energy. Versus, I feel like with nursing in the ER, it is, yes, masculine. Yes, you have to take charge. You have to work independently. You have to communicate with the doctors. But y'all are going to have patients longer than I do. Even worst case scenario, let's say I have a patient for an hour, like an hour long transport. How many times in an ER are you going to admit a patient like to the ER, provide care, do the labs, and then discharge all within an hour? You generally speaking have to be a little more feminine or caring to the point of, Graham, do you need a pillow or do you need water? You're going to be catering more to them emotionally than I am. So even within emergency medicine, and it's not saying that any of you dudes or even any of the females in the ER are not able to be masculine leaders. It's just generally speaking, I can give Graham a blanket and turn up the heat, but I'm not giving her water. I'm not doing all of these things. And especially the really nasty psych patients, like I had one that I literally had to wrestle, put my knee in his armpit to hold him down, tie him down and sedate him. Masculine all the fucking way. He got into my face and was spitting, so he got a mask and I told him, I said, "You're not gonna win this one, bud." And he didn't.
shocker.
I know, right? But I mean, generally speaking, EMS as a whole requires more masculine energy than like ER nursing.
Well, and so let's kind of walk through the history of the genders in public service. Now, if you look back at where did EMS come from? EMS was basically spawned out of the fire departments. historically and even today, firefighting is a largely male dominant workforce.
Yes, women are starting to enter into
Mhm.
it, but we're talking straight statistics.
Well, but again, if you look back into like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when EMS was kind of coming out of its shell, you just really didn't have women in public service. It wasn't a thing. And you can argue why or whatnot. The fact is that's just how it was. That is
Well, because that was
the norm back
well,
then.
because that was the same for military too.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
literally back in what our running joke with this Nick dude is he wants a 50s housewife. But generally speaking, multiple generations ago, who was working in the mills, who was working,
Mhm.
wherever, it was going to be men and then children up until a certain age, and then the female children would go home and learn how to be homemakers, or get married off at 14 and get pregnant.
That is how I was raised. Like I grew up in more or less, you could argue technical definitions, but basically a Christian cult. And my older sister, when she graduated high school, she did not go to college. The only jobs that she got were like caretaker, really like in-home caretaker, or doing cooking at a nursing facility, or now she does cooking for the Samaritan's Purse
I would say
disaster relief organization.
service and need.
So yeah, then there's nothing wrong with any of that. But if you look at the perspective that it's coming from, and we were raised with the courtship mentality, where if a man wanted to court a young lady, he had to go through the parents first. And my brother is an extreme example of this. He literally spent, I think, almost a year interacting with his now father-in-law before his now wife ever knew anything about it. Literally, my brother spent 6 months to a year, I forget the exact time frame, being vetted by this dad before the daughter was even brought in the picture. And then they, courted remotely. I think they only actually physically co-located less than 5 times before they were married. Literally.
Oh no, I'm a
And of course, virgin before, no sex before marriage, none of that.
I'm just cackling at the thought of how you and I met. That Daniel insulted me the first time we met. Not it was a joke. It was joking. And then could you imagine my father vetting you?
He tried. He tried. I basically told him fuck off.
Yeah, that was
politely, but
that was a really awkward one.
that was fucking hilarious.
No, I wanted to melt into my fucking face. I wanted to disappear.
So that's the mentality with which I was brought up. So I understand where he's going. And my first marriage was my wife was my ex-wife was college educated. She did get a degree. It was in home ec at Bob Jones University, which is where we met, because yes, I did go there too. But she worked for maybe 6 months, maybe a year after we got married, but then that was it. Like she was a homemaker, stay-at-home mom. The quote ideal for people like this guy. And I want to be careful, because I'm not going to publicly disparage my ex-wife. That's just not appropriate. It's not relevant to the situation.
Well, and Daniel's never been like that either.
No, but I can honestly say, having had what people are saying is the ideal, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I'm not shitting on it. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. All I'm saying is it doesn't work for everybody.
I was about to say, I feel like it comes down to, honestly, personalities and long-term goals. I was a stay-at-home mom for a year and a half, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't have that kind of personality. It doesn't mean that I don't love my kids, but I'm juggling 2 full-time jobs, a husband, children, household, and no, there's a lot.
I'm basically a full-time job on my own.
And no, there's a lot of stuff that I don't do around the house because Daniel is home more. I mean, Daniel works full time. I mean, God, Daniel plus the projects, he's basically working 2 full-time jobs as well. And our kids are getting older, so they're able to help more. But generally speaking, with how busy we are, I could not imagine being home. That's just not in my personality. And honestly, the kind of mentality that Daniel and I have about life, I don't think the 2 of us would get along well if that was my mentality.
Well, and it's one thing if you are, as a female, choosing
Yes,
to go after that life,
Yep.
choosing that, not because you're being guilted into it to say, oh, well, this is the highest calling. Like that would be like me saying, well, men, your highest calling as a man is to be in the military. That's anything less than that, you're just not man enough. And it sounds stupid to say that. And I think it's the same for women. My ex-wife was raised in the same kind of environment I was. There wasn't even a question that that's the way it was supposed to be. When you push people into that kind of a mindset, and guilt them into it and brainwash them into it from day one, it doesn't work out well because you have smothered who the individual is. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, the individual is all that matters. Yes, there's right and wrong, there's objective standards, but making something a law that doesn't need to be is not right either.
Well, and it's also by, telling certain people within the cult, for example, that you're expected to procreate as much as possible. It it's okay if an individual does not want to have children or, only wants to have one or two or whatever the fuck. But if you're being expected to procreate and you end up with 5 kids that you hate all of them, guess what? Kids are very intuitive.
Well, and I do have a beef. I'm totally fine. People don't want to have kids. It's not for everybody. I get that. I have a problem with the people that shit on having kids.
Yeah.
I do. Because guess what? You were a kid once too. I think it's such an immature, emotionally dysregulated perspective to shit on literally the thing that got you here. And to look at children that way as this, like, they're only this inconvenience. Sure, if you're not cut out for it, fine. Being a parent is like a job. It is not for everybody. It is a struggle oftentimes. It is taxing. It is not easy. It is also incredibly rewarding. So I have no problem with people who make those decisions for their lives, but don't shit on the people that do have kids. Don't shit on having children as a concept, because that's literally part of the fabric of our society and part of the fabric of family structure. Literally, you don't have family without some level of procreation. It doesn't fucking happen.
But I would fall back that same concept is also with whether your husband or wife, because I mean, in the situation we're talking about women in EMS, if they're in a masculine job. I mean, if it bothers you, then so be it. Then don't date, don't get married. Dude, before you and I dated, and I mean, obviously got married, but before we got together, I tried Bumble. Like, I tried meeting people because I wasn't bar going. I was a single mom in school. Like, I wasn't about that life. I didn't
Bars
have time.
suck.
Yeah, I didn't have time for that shit. Well, I can't tell you how many conversations. Like, I met some really nice men, and as soon as it got to, well, what do you do for work? And I told them that I was an EMT and EMS, getting my paramedic. I was going to be done in X amount of time. Blah blah blah. And I would just get ghosted. Or it would be, wow, that's like a really masculine field, or wow, so you're an alpha female. And like I didn't think much about the definition of alpha female until it became a running trend. So I actually ended up putting in my personality description or whatever alpha female, because it obviously wasn't going very well for, surprising men or whatever with what my job was. Well, then it started turning into men would like start talking to me and they would be like, "Ha ha ha, you're a female." Or alpha female, almost like it was a joke, like I didn't know what I was talking about. And then as soon as we circle back to my job and they heard what I did, some of them held on longer than others. Some did not.
Only the strong survive.
Literally, listen, I know I sound a little whorish about the number of men that would start conversations, but I think I only went out on one date with one of them over like a year or some shit like that. And even after that, I decided that he was too much of a beta for me. Like he was not, he was too passive. He was too ho 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 bow down. And I was like, not feeling it.
Now, the only thing, you can take this to the bank, the only thing that I will half agree with the Nick dude on is, in one of his videos, he basically was, said to the guys that if you want a woman, a partner, to follow your leadership, then you need to be man enough to basically earn that respect. I agree with that. I do.
I agree with that.
And
but the way he projects himself,
agreed.
He's a pussy who I would never follow.
That's why I said only half agree with it. And here's the other thing that I have a problem with, coming from the patriarchal upbringing that I did. In the upbringing I had, if you were the man of the house, period, the end, the respect was mandated. Your wife didn't have the option to not submit to you. Now, obviously, you get into the discussion about physical abuse, sexual abuse. Well, that's a whole different animal there. And I'm not saying that was not preached to us. Like, that abuse in that sense was not part of our framework directly. But it didn't matter who you were as a man, as long as you were a God-fearing man, then you deserved to have that respect and to have your wife submit to you. That's where I think this mentality goes awry, because I'm to this day, I see it as my responsibility in my household to earn the respect of my spouse and of my children. It is on me to earn that. It is not to just be given without question. it is my responsibility to act in a way that is deserving of that respect. So yes, I think if you're going to go that route, then that's the way it needs to be. If you're going to be a man who wants a partner in that lifestyle that he's perpetuating, you got some work to do, because you need to earn that shit. I just, the men who demand it and say, and literally like this guy, well, I expect this, I expect that. Okay, bro.
I expect
Good fucking
breakfast
luck.
in bed, and when I
Dear
get home,
God.
you're going to serve me a
Listen,
warm
I'm
dinner.
okay with some breakfast in bed, but that's a different story.
Listen, Daniel don't have to try very hard to get my respect. He's a panty dropper.
But the point being is this mentality of, well, I'm the man, so you have to respect me, period, is fucking horseshit. It's no different than a supervisor saying, well, I'm the supervisor, you need to respect me no matter what. Bull fucking shit.
How many of you is going to hear that from a supervisor and immediately say fuck no?
I imagine most of you have heard it from a supervisor. I don't think this is a stretch.
And most of y'all probably said fuck no. Well, the translation is the same to your home life. Like, just because we live together, especially in this day and age where divorce is, I mean, I wouldn't say easy, especially because South Carolina sucks.
Well,
however,
so let's actually talk about that for a second. And I'm quoting rounded statistics, because this is again, this is just data. You can infer, correlate, whatever you want from the data. But when evaluating, and again, strictly speaking, male-female relationships, so men who are married to men have the lowest divorce rate statistically. We're talking like 25%, maybe. Heterosexual couples, it's about 50-50. You got about a 50% chance. And if you've been divorced before, unfortunately, the odds are not in your favor, which we both, can relate to that. But again, you can only infer so much from statistics. You can only correlate so much, because there are so many variables. But anyway, in female marriages are the most likely to divorce. I want to say the percentages are ballpark 70%, 75%.
Yeah.
Again, rounded numbers. I'm sure there's more updated data, but that's the last that I had seen. Okay, cool. So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't really mean anything, because you're responsible for how you behave. You're responsible for the life that you live, the decisions you make, period, the fucking end.
Well, because still to this day, the highest cause of divorce is finances, which in our relationship, guess what? I'm not the spender.
I am the spender. I'm well aware. So you're saying that's probably that'll give us a divorce?
Oh, hell no. No, there's no divorce in this household. When they're done that, it's till death do us part, whether premature or not.
Yes, I am the spender. Welcome to my world.
Yes, but generally speaking, and the running joke is Daniel is absolutely the alpha of the household, except for 3 areas. That is his hair care, or should I say beard care?
Yes, because there's not much upstairs.
It's really long. It's been long sometimes, but anyways, his beard care.
Balding.
No, you're not. It's just thinning. It's not balding. There's a difference.
That's like saying, you're not ugly. You just have a really nice personality. It's the same thing. It's balding. It's just a different way. It's starting from up here, not from up here.
Okay, that's a gross word. Just
like tuberculosis.
Listen, tuberculosis doesn't bother me. Neither does moist, but balding is. No.
Anyway.
I promise there's a running joke behind that. No, tuberculosis doesn't freak me out. One of my students will gag if you say she can handle TB, but God forbid you say tuberculosis. She's out there gagging in the corner. But anyways,
she doesn't understand how I'm going to use that to my advantage when I run calls with her. But anyway,
Daniel's torturing all of my children. But
and Ansley, if you're listening,
you are such a mean bitch. But anyways, and then of course Daniel is the spender, and then he's the cook. I feel like there was one other major area that he has the feminine energy.
It's mostly the spending and the hygiene products. I learned to cook from my dad. We had a running joke growing up that there's 2 kinds of people in the world. There's the ones that live to eat and the ones that eat to live. My mother was an eat to live kind of person. She would follow the recipe. She could make it work, but there was no soul in the food. My dad and my older sister, they live to eat. That was some good fucking food. But I learned most of it from my dad.
Listen, I can follow a recipe, but if you ask me to sprinkle some shit in there to my soul's want, it's gonna be death by pepper. Anyway,
so we kind of sidetracked a little bit because there's a lot on this to talk about. But we talked about how it has been.
We love these topics.
We don't know how it has been. Well, now let's talk about how things are in EMS specifically. I did a little bit of digging.
Well, so we can all agree that EMS, public service, generally speaking, used to be 100% male and 0% female.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Well, Daniel has brought up the statistics. It was a verbal stroke.
Yeah, that's fine.
Statistics. There we go. From 2024.
This is the most recent comprehensive data we have. So then 24, and again, these numbers are rounded to, it looks like the nearest hundredth. So in 2024, you had approximately 361,000 EMTs. Of that number, about 65 to 70% of them were male and 30 to 35% were female. Sure, those numbers fluctuated over the course of the year. For AEMTs, there was a total of 26,600, and again, approximately 70% male and approximately 30% female. And then paramedics, you had 138,700, and the ranges there were 70 to 77% male and 23 to 30% female. So we're still offset, but women basically make up about a third of the EMS work.
Here's the thing though, and I know it is a very, very small portion, but I want to bring up the fact that those are slowly changing. I would also bring up it is going to depend on the region that you're in.
Absolutely.
So in the upstate of South Carolina, let's take my first class. My first EMT class at my new job, because I've been teaching for 4 years, but at this new job, first class was 10 students. Well, only 10% of the class, so one student was a dude. Was a dude. He was by himself. He was the only dude in that entire class, and most of my adjuncts were female. So we're talking 90 and 10. Well, the class that just graduated, 29 of them, well, we'll call it 30 because the one did quit like a day before class because his son was critically injured. So,
Yeah.
well, yeah, absolutely fair. I don't blame him. I would have said fuck it too.
Chuck it in the bucket.
30 students. I think I'd have to go back and count by name, but I believe only 10 of them were dudes. So a third of the class, 30%, the rest of them were female. Now, of the graduating class, it was only a third of the class was male. I think I graduated 4 men out of 21.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, 4 men out of 21 because most of them have dropped the class for various reasons. Various reasons ranging from bullshit to oh shit. And I'll give them that. Some of them were dumb as shit, but anyway,
In the most loving way possible.
yeah, not logically. I'm talking about like the reasons that they left. Like you could they gave me a reason, but you could tell that like it was a made up reason for whatever. Yeah, that it was bullshit.
Allegedly.
Right. But I would say that statistically, at least in the upstate, that the percentage of male versus female is shifting. I mean, think about some of the jobs that we've been at. Most of them are actually female.
I would argue around here it's about 50-50.
Agreed. Because there's been a couple of our jobs that it's like, holy shit, you throw a pen and you hit 10 females and 1 dude.
Yeah, and I think too, the thing that we deal with in this part of the country especially, but I don't think is just the Bible Belt, honestly. I think this is generally everywhere in some capacity. You still have either a lot of the older generation who are genuinely misogynistic, and they will basically only favor the female employees who are either actively giving them favors or they think can give them favors. Or you have kind of the younger guys who were still brought up with that mentality and think that they're cool trying to be that way on the sly. So you have the numbers are shifting. The mentality is still lagging though. And I think that the best thing, and it's just my opinion, the best thing that the female slice of the workforce can do is continue to show up, continue to be excellent. Don't wear a victimhood badge. Don't shove it in everybody's face that, you're the female who's, whooping ass or whatever. Like, don't be obnoxious about it. And not because, we need to be sensitive for everybody's feelings. But if you want to build respect and credibility, you can't do that. And I would say, conversely, for the dudes, is be objective in how you're evaluating people. Look at people based on their behavior, and we'll get a little bit more into that, the way things should be. Don't get your panties in a wad, and be willing to let other people do better than you, whether they're men or women. Have some humility and let people step up, give people the space to demonstrate that, hey, they know what they're doing. Because it's very easy. This is this is just a mentality that a lot of guys deal with. It's very easy to write off women for being emotional or what the fuck ever. That is a very common, unfortunate instinct. And so that's where I think a lot of men, even the younger guys who aren't blatantly misogynistic, sometimes have to check themselves and say, well, wait a minute, I don't need to be that. I don't need to, this is not helping the situation. I don't need to be thinking like this.
Well, and when you're talking about like the emotional stability and everything, yes, generally speaking, especially with the misogynists and everything, they fall back on that women are very weepy. They cry. Listen, I will cry in a hot second if I am angry because murder's wrong. So, no, if you see me crying, I made a decision to not go to jail. And it's
there.
You're in. Oh,
That's a joke. That's an inside joke.
oh, should we share? Should we share the
I
story?
think we did last time.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
couldn't remember.
we did.
No, it 100% was a running joke of
Yeah.
there.
For those of you who don't get the joke, go listen to the previous episodes.
Yes, I'm almost positive we shared at least
did,
at
yeah.
least once. But anyways, I would fall back on that. Although women can be emotional in that frame, men also have a lack of emotional regulation, but oftentimes it's going to present with anger, irritability, assertion, the way, not necessarily what you're saying, but how you're saying it to other people. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I have a provider come into my office as a training administrator, and cry because they're emotional and worried about it, that's something you can talk through. You come in raging and wanting to fight, my first instinct is going to throat punch you and tell you to get the fuck out and come back when you can calm down.
Instinct, not action. She hasn't done that.
I've never done that.
Allegedly.
I have never done that. Wanted to, sure. But point being, I'm sorry, men are just as emotional as women if you have a lack of emotional regulation. It presents differently, but guess what? Men can be whiny little bitches just as well as women can be raging bitch cunts, depending on what time of the month it is. Let's just be completely honest. You have to be aware of what you're going through. And men have hormone cycles just like women. You sure as fuck may not bleed, but guess what? You're hormonal at certain times of the month. Honestly, men, if you start noticing that people like you more at certain points of the months than other, maybe you should start tracking your own cycle. Just saying. Also, something that Daniel and I have frequently talked about, especially in like the personal wellness, I think we've done it 2 or 3 times now, or the past, oh my God, January's gonna be 2 years of doing this.
We've been running our mouths for 2 fucking years.
Oof. Anyways, there is so much that plays into this. You can talk about testosterone levels, estrogen levels. You can talk about insomnia. Listen, when I have a really bad week of stress and like lack of sleep, I'll cry. Honestly, it happened this morning. I was exhausted. I cried for about 10 minutes. Daniel said there, and I got over it.
I didn't actually.
No, he didn't actually. No, he was very, very sweet. We were good. But there's so much that plays into it. Same with the masculine versus feminine energy. Same with who is going to be right for a certain position. The question isn't exact counts of, oh, there should be X number of men versus X number of females in certain positions. It really needs to fall back on how that person is as a leader, as a provider, as an educator. Like, so many examples. One that Daniel and I had talked about, it was probably a good year ago. Yeah, this time last year. It's probably been almost a year. Something that we talked about is let's say that you have me as an educator who is a younger educator, but is a very advanced provider. And I'm not saying that to fluff me up. Just I acknowledge I had a good education.
She's smarter than me. I have no problem admitting it when it comes to paramedicine. Suck it up. Carry on.
You made me feel awkward. Anyways,
that's my job.
Always. Versus there was somebody else that was wanting an educator position that statistically, had been in it longer, had been out of the field for a hot minute. And it was one of those things that you really couldn't compare the two of us like equally on the same ground because, I'm a newer provider, but I'm still in the field. I had a good background of education and teaching experience. But this other person, yes, was a dude. Yes, had been teaching for, significantly longer than I was. But if you looked at it, didn't have a degree, which didn't make him not a good provider. It's apples and oranges at that point, which is where instead of falling back on, oh, well, we're going to hire him because he's a dude, or we're going to hire her because, oh, the department doesn't have any females in the department. It really needs to fall back on MEI versus DEI, which Daniel is much better versed in this than I am. But I mean, generally speaking, there are so many times where you can't fall back based on gender.
Well, and so we have a longer episode where we've talked about DEI versus MEI, so
Mhm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are not bad qualities, just as far as how you're going to manage staffing and choosing people, both employees and for promotions and so forth. You're better off using MEI, merit, excellence, and integrity, because that's evaluating the person. And I hate the term like, gender blind or color blind, just because it sounds so pithy and just obnoxious, but in a perfect world, your gender, your race, your ethnicity should be irrelevant to the discussion of, can you do this job or can you handle this promotion? That literally has no bearing on it at all, because we've already established there's a massive amount of variety in character traits between males and females. So and amongst other ethnic groups, and yeah, okay, sure, people make jokes about all the Asians are smarter. Okay, fine, but like,
I would fall back on, though, at that you can have a dumb Asian, just like you can with anything else.
right, it's a no factor ultimately.
Because I would fall back on, culturally, you might be raised a certain way because generally speaking, some of the Asian, China, those countries support the STEM departments of education, science, technology, or
Well,
I think it's STEAM, but they put more of an emphasis on certain things. But that doesn't mean that you can't have somebody that, statistically doesn't want to go to school. You could have a female who's not as good of a cook as her husband based on how we were raised. The running joke that African Americans can't swim. I'm going to tell you right now, I was on the swim team in high school. That is not fucking true. So that's why so many stereotypes are not relevant anymore. It's
yeah.
not fair. It's relative to the person's want to succeed at something, to learn something.
And this is the other beautiful thing about EMS is it's not a job like the military where it's just straight hardcore, kill people and break things. That's pretty well their job. EMS is this weird blend that actually requires nurturing too. I would actually say it's probably a good 50-50 of whether you're nurturing versus being, aggressive, assertive, so forth. It's honestly 50-50. I have found that I get into a lot fewer conflicts and have better outcomes of the calls overall when you do take a more nurturing tone with patients. That doesn't mean that you're passive. It doesn't mean that you're a doormat. It just means that you balance your behavior. There's some men that do that very well, and there's some men that don't. And that doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Listen, I love hearing Daniel talk about his little gram patients, and he refers to them as darling, and they're
Oh, listen, I dial up the Southern drawl. Like every grandma is baby doll, darling,
Yep.
honey, like, and they
I
they
promise
fucking melt.
he does not talk like that at home at all. No, no, no.
But you dial up the charm a little bit, but that's more nurturing. Grandma doesn't need someone to come in and say, well, you're not hurt that bad. You'll be okay. Let's get you over to the hospital. No, that doesn't help anything at all.
My favorite thing to tell them is, "Baby, I'm gonna take care of you today, but next time if you wanna meet new people or you wanna see me, let's meet at the grocery.
Yeah,
Let's not
yeah,
do this again."
yeah. Now, there are plenty of situations where I need a female partner. And I mean, there's the obvious low hanging fruit, the essays, situations. And I'll, without going into gratuitous detail, a call that I ran years ago. Mind you, my partner was about 3 inches taller than me with like feet bigger than mine, which is rare. Homeboy was built like a brick shit house. So it was just the two of us showing up to this call.
You got some big ass fucking feet.
Yeah, no, his were bigger.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So us two Sasquatches show up to this call, and our patient is, I want to say, is a preteen female who family was having a pool party, and she had gotten into the shower to rinse off, and as she was stepping into the shower, slipped and landed right between her legs on the side of the tub, and was bleeding some. So we don't find all this out until we get there. And the family was wonderful. This was not a sketchy situation at all. They were absolutely accommodating and understanding. But I made a phone call. I was like, hey, like, do we have anyone like a female supervisor or somebody that is anywhere near this part of the county that can come and help out? And the short answer was no. there was nobody that wouldn't be there in less than 20, 30 minutes at least. You know, family is freaking out and they want to know, like, hey, like, do we need to take her now? Do we, like, what can we do? We have an active bleed of some kind. So I'm in this horrific situation where this poor girl, and I mean, my partners know better, you know, obviously we're both professional, both above board on everything. It's just an awkward situation to be in.
Well, especially for prepubescent, teenagers.
So, I mean,
Totally agree.
Yeah, imagine if we had to deal with that with Kaylee. Like, that would be I mean, she's got her head on enough that I think she would understand.
I would stab somebody. Look,
But it would be,
I'll look.
okay, but you're also a paramedic. These people were not.
Listen, I know, but
Okay.
you're telling me to put myself in that situation. I will fight somebody.
Point being, it's a lose-lose situation at this point. So, you know, and the mother was understanding. Basically, the net result was I did about a 2-second visual inspection, and that was it. Literally okay, cool. And I hate it. Like, to this day, like, that just hurts my soul that we had to be in that situation. So I think that we need to view men and women and masculine and feminine energies as complementary, not as competitive. Because in EMS especially, we are in an environment where we are in a lot of gray areas, a lot of messy situations, a lot of things where one plays well more than the other.
So, are you telling me that I have a patient with maggots in their scrotum that you'll look instead of me, or are you going to be too painful?
I mean, I'll be hurting, but yes, I would take the hit for the team on that one. Yeah. I would just be curious at that point. I was like, I got to see this shit. Like, it's going to make me hurt, but I got to see this shit.
It was moving independently.
Anyway.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
point being, we need both the protective and the nurturing skills equally. You need a mix of compassion and intensity in this job. And so it's this mentality that, you know, men are just better at it. Men are just better for that. No.
Well, and even who is smarter? I would say statistically, I think we've run into more female critical care paramedics than men. You know, the higher level, the long organized isn't it?
Well,
I'm trying to think of a word for it.
Let me throw my own gender under the bus a little bit.
Go for it.
So men are not as good at multitasking.
That too.
Now, that doesn't mean that we don't perform well under pressure. We do. But we don't always do great at multitasking, or at least we have to work harder to be proficient at it than women do. Again, stereotypically, generically speaking, that's a general understanding. And I do believe there is data to support this. I need to go back and look because I haven't recently.
So I can bring up a study that I have a feeling if he does any kind of Googling, this Nick dude is going to find. So within the last, I think it's been 6 months. It was definitely this calendar year. I think it's the NIH, the Institute of
National Institute of Health.
There we go. I was right. NIH. Anyways, they released a study. And it was a statistical, I don't know why that word is fucking me up today. It was a statistical study about how men function better under pressure in CVICU, the ICUs, the ER, the et cetera, and how women perform better in the long-term care. And I was like, well, that's very interesting because I think about how many nurses we have in the ER that are amazing, men and women, how many providers we have in EMS, men and women, who function well. I function better under pressure than slow as you roll, long-term care. I die.
I can attest.
Listen, I die. Oh, for me?
Yeah.
I would die. I function better under pressure. I'm working 2 full-time jobs. I work better under pressure.
Yeah.
However, the further down that I read on this article, it was self-reporting. It wasn't based on job performances. It wasn't based on end of the year statistics, like proof statistically how many men and women are in each job. It's the providers, nursing staff providers in a hospital ranked themselves based on comfort in 20 or 30 different categories. So it was self-reported, not even statistical proof that women did or did not function well in high stakes situations, which I would fall back on. Females, generally speaking, may feel more connected with patients in a longer term situation because of the nurturing aspect, but there were plenty of them that said that they function fine in high stakes situations. And here's the thing. What man, generally speaking, what man is going to admit that they don't function well under pressure? The whole gender bias.
Publicly admit.
there's such a gender bias that in EMS we need to be working against, that, men can't have feelings, men can't have PTSD, military men can't do this, it's weak, it's this, it's that. So when self-reporting, most men are not going to say that they don't function well under pressure, that they like the slower pace, that they would rather have grandma in a long-term facility for, 8 months to a year, or, forever if it's a memory care unit. So the whole self-reporting study, I take issue with, because when you self-report, what have we seen? And also, what have Daniel and I talked about? We tend to be harsher critics of ourselves than other people. We tend to view ourselves usually less than what we're actually worth. And I mean, Daniel and I can attest to that. He thinks worse of himself than I do. And I know for a fact I think worse about myself than he does on multiple fronts. But that doesn't mean that our self-perception,
Perception.
well, I was going perspective, but that one works too. I made a baby with 2 words.
Perspective is like external.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't mean that we're correct. So, like, that study saying that men function better in high stress situations, it's self-reporting.
Well, and just in general, when you're evaluating any studies about any of these topics, there is a massive difference between correlation and causation. You can correlate the fuck out of anything. And correlations can be true. They can be, but they don't automatically mean causation. There is a massive difference. A lot of, and this is true for any uncontrolled study, because to have to define causation, you need to be able to control every single variable. So in a past life, when I was pursuing a counseling degree, I also took every single fucking psychology class that the college offered, and experimental psychology was one of my favorites. But this is the kind of shit that we spent, an entire semester fucking digging into. Is just because you can convince somebody of something doesn't mean the evidence actually proves that. Because a truly controlled study, you have to control all the variables. So if you're baking something, okay, sorry, a little tongue in cheek considering the topic, but if you're baking something and you say, hey, you know what? Like, I want to see what happens if I change this one ingredient. Cool. That's a controlled study, largely. Yeah, okay, you don't always control the humidity in the room, but for all intents and purposes, you're controlling all the variables. So you can shift individual variables to see what causes a change and what kind of change, what doesn't. When you're evaluating human behavior in uncontrolled environments, you can't fucking do that. So sure, you can say the data may say that, married couples who say the wife makes more than the man, they're statistically, more likely to fall apart. Okay, that is a correlative statement. But that doesn't mean that the difference in income is what caused the divorce. There are so many other variables that are not accounted for in these studies that come into play. My own father tried to tell me that because I divorced my son's my son's mother, fuck me, because I divorced her, I was setting him up for failure, and that statistically he was more likely to do poorly in school, to get in trouble with the law, to just not succeed well in life. And yes, but so that was just his fucking message that he hammered at me and tried to shove in my fucking face. And the irony is so funny, because now that I have primary custody of my son, he's doing exceptionally in school and is learning to be more socially adjusted and doing very, very well. So my father can go kick rocks, to put it politely, but you just because there is a statistic, there are some statistics, does not mean that you are a slave to those statistics.
Well, and if anything, I would say that you need to take statistics as your motivator, if you will, which is how this entire fucking thing started, to prove them otherwise. Because unless something crazy happens, I am very confident in stating, Nick, you're so fucking wrong. Daniel and I have a very wonderful relationship. I make more money, but that doesn't mean that anything's wrong. If we end up not divorced, but if either of us end up, kicking rocks, over our grave prematurely, it is not going to be because I made more money.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a time and a place thing. And that's another thing that a lot of these statistics don't factor in, is looking at what you and I are doing, where we are going. We are not in a rut. that isn't going anywhere. Because yes, I can see whether the disparity cutting either way, one spouse making significantly more than the other, it can cause conflict either direction. But when you're stuck in a rut and there's no push for change, there's no long-term plan, you're literally just doing the same thing day by day by day. Okay, yeah, I can see where that's causing conflict and where divorce can potentially spawn from something like that. However, in our situation, where we are now is not our end game. We have a very particular end game of what we want for the next 10 years. This is not it. This is a great chapter. We are accomplishing so much more than either of us imagined when we first got together. There is a trajectory that we're on. And so the financial disparity between the two of us is transient. Like that's not the end game all around.
Well, only we look at it as family money, not oh mine and yours and all that kind of stuff.
Well, but even that aside, just the earning capacity of both of us, it's a no factor for us because it's no different than one of our good friends. Both spouses work, but the one spouse was in aircraft mechanic school for a prolonged period of time. I forget how long it was.
Years.
Yeah, so he was stuck doing that full time. His wife worked full-time hours. She's an engineer and she's largely able to work from home, but she was the one who was the breadwinner. Well, there was a purpose to that. It wasn't that he wasn't capable of earning money. It wasn't he wasn't working or he wasn't busting his ass. Just for him to get himself and his family to where he wanted to be, that's the decision they had to make at that time and place. It is the same with us. No, we are not stuck in this rut. Obviously timing changes for things and sometimes you have to adapt and not everything goes according to plan. But guess what? You put in the work, you have a long-term vision together. Any couple that has a long-term vision together has a set of values and takes action on those is going to do better, is going to last longer, is going to be more successful. So y- statistics are only relevant as snapshots. They don't factor in trajectories. They don't factor in backstory. They don't factor in mindsets. They're just generalities that may or may not be true.
Well, and let's take, back to the feminine and masculine energy within EMS. So many of us, like the more students that I talk to, the more providers I talk to, pretty much all of the providers, men or women, that succeed in this field have a traumatic backstory in some form or fashion. Neglect, adoption, drugs, you name it, it's there in varying severities, but that's not for us to determine and situation compare. But those of us that succeed want to have some level of independence, of fixing things that are broken amongst other people that weren't fixed amongst themselves, which naturally is going to bring in, no matter whether it's men or women, going to bring in some level of nurturing and fixing and problem solving and all the rest of it. Well, let's take divorce rates and statistics. Statistically, anyone in public service who marries someone else in public service is going to end up divorced. That's just what it is. But here's the thing, you have so many factors that play into that. It really does come down to mindset, it comes down to long term goals. Because if your entire life, and we've talked about this multiple times, if your entire life is EMS and running calls, you talk about it at work, you talk about it at home, you talk about it with your kids, you have no other friends outside of public service. Well, where does burnout? And we've talked about how we don't like the terminology burnout, but generally,
Not as it's generally used, I
oh,
guess
well,
you'd say.
yes. The general definition of how people use the term burnout. But how often do we hear stuff like that they get burned out? I actually made a TikTok video recently in response to something else. It was a stitch about a younger female asking, "Hey, is it better to date somebody in the field or out of the field?" And I literally prefaced this at the beginning of my stitch that is a loaded fucking question, because everything that we've talked about today about the gender roles and characteristics and masculine energy and leadership ability, I could not imagine having a different job, because both jobs that I have require me to be an alpha female, require me to be a leader. And there are so many aspects of the education job that I have that Daniel would be wonderful in, but the level of multitasking and things that I do, I don't genuinely like. Let's say,
I know that I don't multitask as well as you do. I'll throw myself under the bus on that one.
yeah, but thinking about, like, long term, because I'm going to retire eventually, I'm going to move on, whatever. Not to say that I'm, leaving tomorrow, but generally speaking, I'm going to move on from a job at some point. So thinking about like training somebody to take over my position, I don't know who I would necessarily dub or train or whatever, because I need to look at it as my replacement is not necessarily going to be able to do everything exactly the way I do it. But it's a matter of finding the person that is best fitted for it, regardless of whether it's male or female, regardless of EMT or paramedic or whatever. It really comes down to the ability to do the job. And me as a female, I do have a leadership role. I am considered admin. I am considered leadership all the way around. And I am appreciative that my supervisors at both jobs, both of my jobs, did not just look at my years of service. They did not look at me as a gender. They looked at my resume. They looked at my ability to do it because statistically, I was able to do it. So, for people like Nick who think that I am
That's the way you say that.
incapable,
Nick. It's just hilarious. Anyway.
well, because to say that me being told that I can't participate in class because of my gender, because I wasn't a firefighter, dude, fuck you. It to say that I need to be home barefoot and pregnant, fuck you, because I guarantee you that I am a better paramedic than you ever have. And I have probably fewer years of experience than you do. And I'm also educating and turning out some excellent damn providers. I go into my job thinking and wanting to educate these students enough that they become better providers than I am. That is the sign of a good leader, is wanting to lead and educate your people into being better than you are. It is not a competition. I want better providers and to make EMS better, and shits like you fuck up not only EMS but also healthcare. Dude, you as a nurse, you're in a female dominated field. And I think it's funny that one of the comments under his thing about him being a travel nurse and how he was talking shit about professionalism, dude, you're not, and I'm speaking to all the providers, men and women that think this. If you can't hold a steady job and everybody is bringing up that you're not professional and you try and say, oh, well, it's because I'm abrasive. Bro, obviously the abrasiveness is not working. There is a time and a place to choose conflict. And if you have to be a traveler because no job wants to commit to you, it has nothing to do with the industry. It has nothing to do with your gender. It has to do with you as a fucking person.
Yup. So,
That was a lot. We said that this wasn't going to be a relationship podcast, but I feel like this is very applicable on multiple fronts.
well, but I think it's this is the kind of stuff that people are dealing with. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard over the years complaints about, from women about how they were treated and not people trying to be like, boo hoo, poor me, but like legitimately people are like, hey, like I came up in an era where I had no support and I needed to step up and work twice as hard. And I hate that that's the way it had to be. I think that we should all be working twice as hard. We should all be working extra, not like literal hours extra, but like effort and intentionality. We should all be putting in the work to be the best and not get complacent.
Well, and any time you've broken through, I mean, think about any of the major shifts ever. African Americans and Caucasian people used to be completely separate. You had to have the people that break the stereotype. And every time something major like that has happened in our history, it has always worked out well. It has always worked out well. So, ladies, you need to keep fighting. The Knicks of the world, fuck you. Adjust your perspective, or you need to, get your
out.
shit chopped. Yeah, or leave, whichever. Sorry, I'm not playing that game. People
just the get your shit chopped part. I was like, wow.
Listen, don't procreate at that point, because people like you that are probably going to raise children like that, and this dude does have children. He has boys. This is the kind of stuff that needs to not be passed on. You want to talk about generational trauma? This right here is a perfect example of generational trauma. Ladies, stop being whorish cunts. Dudes, stop sleeping around. Like, if that's what you want in life, then so be it. But like, if you want to get rid, this is the thing that kills me. If you don't want a certain reputation and you want to break the chains of stereotypes, stop feeding into it. Listen, I could rant on this for fucking ever.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're excited about the debate. I mean, if you're watching this now, it's already happening or happened, but I hope you're looking forward to it, because God, we fucking are. And we look forward to sharing that with you guys and see what you think. So, anything else you want to throw in?
If you're offended by this one, good.
Yes. If you learned something, awesome. Share it with your friends. If you were offended, good. We'll see you on Tuesday. That's all we got. Talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us on YouTube at Paramedic AF.
or you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at the Paramedic AF Show. You can catch up on the Daily Debrief, kind of a sub-show within the Paramedic AF Show, or you can watch our full-length episodes, including interviews and discussions on leadership, culture, personal wellness, mental health, everything related to daily life in EMS. Make sure you hit like and subscribe.